The entire mansion froze. Every head turned toward the small boy standing in the corner of the governor's study. His voice had been quiet, almost swallowed by the hum of machines and whispers of frustration, but everyone had heard it. "Sir, can I try?" The words hung in the air like forbidden music. The governor's security team, the safe technicians, even the journalists waiting outside, all turned to look. There, next to the tall glass cabinet filled with imported whiskey, stood Eli. A skinny 10-year-old in faded jeans and a cartoon t-shirt. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched his schoolbag straps. His eyes, however, were steady, focused on the massive steel safe that had mocked everyone for nearly a week. At the center of the room, Governor Richard Belmont turned slowly. His jaw tightened. The veins on his forehead bulged. For 6 days, this safe had refused to open. He had hired specialists from 3 countries, men who called themselves masters of locks. None succeeded. Now, his frustration had boiled over into madness. 10 minutes earlier, he had slammed his glass down and shouted, "Whoever opens this damn thing gets 500 million naira." Everyone thought he was joking. Everyone except the small boy standing by the wall. Belmont's eyes narrowed. "What did you say, boy?" Eli swallowed hard. "You said, whoever opens it gets 500 million, sir." "Can I try?" A wave of laughter rolled through the room. Dry, mocking, disbelieving. The technicians looked at one another and shook their heads. The governor smirked, lifting his glass again. "You?" he said, pointing the rim of the glass toward Eli. "A housemaid's child wants to open my vault? You can barely reach the dial, boy. What makes you think you can do what trained professionals couldn't?" Eli didn't move. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He didn't know how to explain that he'd seen the governor open it before, that his mind worked like a camera, that every number and turn was still burning inside his memory like a song he could never forget. Before he could speak again, a woman's voice broke through. Eli, Miriam, his mother, the governor's maid for nearly 10 years, rushed into the room. Her hands were still wet from scrubbing the marble floor. Her face showed pure terror. "Eli, what are you doing here? Come, let's go." But Eli didn't move. The governor's smile turned cruel. "No, Miriam. Let him talk. Maybe the boy has something to teach us." The guards chuckled. One of the technicians whispered, "This should be fun." Eli looked up at the tall man behind the desk. "You said anyone, sir?" he repeated softly. Belmont leaned back in his leather chair, folding his arms. "Fine. Go ahead, boy. Show us your magic. When you fail, maybe your mother will learn to control you." Miriam shook her head desperately. "Please, sir. He's just a child." "Silence," Belmont barked, his voice echoing off the marble. The room went still again. Everyone watched as the small boy stepped toward the safe, his sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. The steel giant stood taller than him, gleaming under the chandelier light. Eli stretched his small hands toward the dial. The governor poured himself another drink. "You have 60 seconds. Eli took a deep breath. The numbers flashed in his mind, left 3 times to 47, right twice to 23, left once to 91, right to 15. He closed his eyes, remembering the night he'd seen it. The governor had been drunk then, laughing and bragging about how no one could ever open his safe. He didn't know the boy hiding in the corner had memorized every move. Eli's fingers began to turn the dial. 1 full turn, 2, 3, stop at 47. The sound of metal clicking echoed through the room. Someone gasped. Right 2 turns to 23. Left once to 91. Eli's heart pounded. He turned the dial slowly to 15. Then stopped. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The governor laughed, shaking his head. "See? Child's play." Then click. A deep mechanical sound echoed through the walls. Eli gripped the handle with both hands and pulled. The safe door, weighing nearly 100 kilograms, creaked open smoothly. The laughter died instantly. Inside, under the chandelier light, lay bundles of crisp naira notes, gold bars, foreign currencies, and thick envelopes stamped with the state seal. The boy had done it. He had opened the governor's safe in 60 seconds. The entire room stood in stunned silence. The governor's glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. He stared, his face pale, his lips trembling. No, no, that's not possible. Eli stepped back slowly, frightened now by the silence. You said whoever opens it gets 500 million, sir. The governor's shock twisted into rage. You tricked me, he roared. You and your mother. You plotted this. Miriam gasped. Sir, no. I swear. But before she could finish, Belmont lunged forward, his hand grabbing the boy by the collar. How did you know the code? He shouted, shaking him violently. Tell me, who helped you? Did you steal it? Sir, please, Miriam screamed, rushing toward them. He just saw you open it that night. He didn't steal. The governor shoved her away so hard she fell against the desk. Papers scattered. Don't you dare lie to me, Belmont bellowed. You think you can humiliate me in front of my own staff? You think this is a game? Sir, please, he's a child. Eli cried out, terrified. I didn't steal it, sir. You said anyone could try. One of the technicians moved forward hesitantly. Governor, please. Everyone saw what happened. The boy didn't cheat. Another raised his phone quietly. The recording light blinked red. But Belmont wasn't listening. His pride, his power, his paranoia. Everything boiled together into pure fury. You're finished. Both of you. Fired. Arrested. The room erupted into chaos. Guards shouting, Miriam crying, technicians stepping back. The boy stumbled, nearly falling. And then a voice cut through the noise. Governor Belmont, a woman said sharply. I'd think twice before touching that child again. Everyone turned. Standing by the door was Clara Ross, a private security consultant from the UK, hired just 2 days earlier to evaluate the failed attempts. Her phone was raised high, camera recording. Her expression was calm, but her tone was deadly. I have the entire thing on video, she said. Your offer, the boy's success, and now your assault. The governor froze. His breathing was heavy, his face red with fury. Put that phone down, he ordered. No, Clara said. You're done. The room went completely silent again. The camera kept rolling. The open safe behind them glowed like proof of a crime. And that was how it began, the fall of one of the most powerful men in the country. The day a small boy opened a safe and unlocked the truth the world wasn't supposed to see. Because what lay inside that vault wasn't just money. It was evidence. Documents that could destroy careers, expose corruption, and end an empire. But Eli didn't know that yet. He only knew that his mother was crying, the governor was shouting, and the world had suddenly turned its eyes on him. If this story already has you holding your breath, don't stop now. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments and subscribe right now, because Chapter 2 will reveal what was really inside that safe, and how one child's courage exposed an empire. The governor's face filled every screen in the mansion's control room, red-eyed, shouting, shoving a child. The security feeds replayed what had just happened upstairs, captured from 3 different angles. Within minutes, the footage had left the building, sent by someone whose hands were trembling but steady enough to press upload. By the time Governor Richard Belmont realized it, the damage was done. Who leaked that? He barked, slamming his fist on the polished desk. His voice shook the walls. Find them. I want that video deleted from every site, every phone, every cloud. But it was too late. The video was already out. It had traveled faster than his anger, through the staff group chat, through social media, through 100 shocked messages that all said the same thing. The governor attacked a child. It had only been 45 minutes since the safe opened. Down the corridor, Miriam sat on the floor, holding Eli close. Her hands still trembled. Her cheek was red from where she'd hit the desk. Every muscle in her body screamed for her to run, to take her son and disappear. But where would she go? The mansion gates were guarded. Outside those walls, Belmont's power stretched across the city. Eli clung to her, whispering, Mama, did I do something wrong? Her throat tightened. No, baby. You were brave. You did what was right. But he's angry. I know. Her voice cracked. That's what men like him do when they're afraid. The heavy door opened with a metallic thud. Clara Ross, the security consultant, stepped inside. Her phone was in her hand, still recording. He's gone mad, she whispered. He's threatening to shut down the compound. I've never seen a man so scared of the truth. Miriam looked up, confused. Truth? Clara lowered her voice. That safe wasn't just full of cash. I saw what was in there. Documents, contracts, foreign transfers, property deeds in other people's names. If those papers are real, it's proof of corruption on a scale this country hasn't seen. Miriam blinked. You mean the governor? Clara nodded. The very same man who just called your son a thief. Footsteps thundered outside. Guards shouting orders. Clara grabbed Miriam's hand. Come with me. Now. They moved fast, down a side corridor lit by emergency lights. The mansion was chaos. Technicians packing equipment, aides shouting into phones, drivers rushing cars to the gate. In the distance, Belmont's voice echoed like thunder. Lock every door. Nobody leaves until I say so. But they slipped through the laundry exit, Miriam's route to the staff quarters. The night air hit them like a slap. Clara's car was parked by the service gate, engine running. Get in, she said. Miriam hesitated. Where will we go? Somewhere safe, Clara answered, eyes on the road. And somewhere with Wi-Fi. By morning, the city had seen the video. It opened with the governor's voice, loud, slurred, filled with pride. Whoever opens this safe gets 500 million naira. Then came the image of a small boy stepping forward. His polite request, the laughter, the sudden click, the governor's disbelief. And finally, the part that made the world stop, the assault. 12 minutes uncut, raw. Uploaded by Clara Ross under the title, Governor offers 500 million Nigerian nairas reward. Then attacks Maid's son who wins. By sunrise, it had 500,000 views. By 9 a.m., the number crossed 2 million. By noon, the governor's name was everywhere. Outside his mansion gates, journalists gathered with cameras and microphones. Protesters held handwritten signs. Justice for Eli. Pay the boy. No one is above the law. Inside, Belmont raged. Fake. It's all fake. He shouted to his press secretary. Get a statement ready. Say the video was edited. But every attempt to bury the story only spread it further. The truth was in too many hands now. Technicians, guards, witnesses. The internet had already judged him. That afternoon, his phones wouldn't stop ringing. The deputy governor wanted answers. The party chairman wanted distance. The state assembly wanted an investigation. Sponsors were pulling funding. And his wife, she wasn't picking up. Across town, in a small apartment that smelled of old soap and new hope, Miriam sat beside Eli on a borrowed couch. A kind neighbor had let them stay the night. On the TV, news anchors replayed the clip over and over. A shocking act of violence from a sitting governor, one said. But the real story is the 10-year-old boy who opened an unbreakable safe in under a minute. Eli looked down, fidgeting with his fingers. They're all watching me, Mama. Miriam smiled weakly. They're watching because you did something brave. I didn't mean to make trouble. I know, baby. Sometimes telling the truth causes trouble first, but peace after. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. This is Clara, came the voice. I'm outside. There's someone who wants to talk to you. Civil rights lawyers, journalists, people who can protect you both. But we need to move fast. The governor's men are searching for you. Miriam's heart raced. He won't stop, will he? No, Clara said. Not until he's forced to. That evening, the governor called a press conference. Cameras filled the hall. He stepped up to the podium, his suit immaculate but his hands shaking slightly. My fellow citizens, he began, forcing a smile. A misleading video is circulating online. It shows me interacting with a child in a manner that's been taken completely out of context. Out of context, a journalist interrupted. We saw you grab the boy by the collar. Belmont glared. The footage is manipulated. An edited smear campaign by political enemies. Another voice shouted from the back. Did you or did you not offer 500 million naira to anyone who could open your safe? Belmont hesitated. It was a joke. You signed a document on camera, someone yelled. Chaos erupted, flashes, questions, shouting. Belmont slammed the microphone and stormed out. The clip went viral before he reached his car. By the next morning, the Attorney General announced an official inquiry. Opposition members demanded suspension. The Anti-Corruption Commission confirmed it had received credible evidence concerning the contents of the governor's safe. Belmont's empire was crumbling. Contracts frozen, allies silent, enemies circling like hawks. And somewhere in a small rented office downtown, Clara Ross watched the news with a cold, determined smile. She turned to Miriam and Eli. This is just the beginning, she said. We're filing charges, assault, breach of contract, corruption. He'll never silence you again. Miriam stared at the screen showing the governor's angry face. He thought he was untouchable, she whispered. Clara nodded. Until a 10-year-old touched the truth. Eli looked up. Mama, does that mean we're safe now? Miriam took his hand. Not yet, my love, but we're closer than we've ever been. Outside, car horns echoed through the city. Posters were already appearing on walls. Justice for Eli. The boy who opened a safe had opened something far bigger. An entire country's eyes. If you felt your heart racing through this chapter, wait till you hear what happens next. In Chapter 3, the governor's secrets reach the highest offices in the land, and someone powerful decides Eli and his mother must disappear. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe, because the storm has only just begun. Rain poured hard that night. The sound of thunder mixed with the growl of engines outside a quiet apartment building on the edge of the city. Inside, Miriam jerked awake to a loud knock. Open up. Security check. Her heart froze. She looked at Eli, asleep on the couch under a thin blanket, his small face peaceful after days of chaos. Another bang came, louder this time. Mrs. Miriam Okeke. Open the door. Clara's warning from the previous day echoed in her mind. If anyone comes without identification, don't open. Belmont's men are still looking. Miriam tiptoed to the window and peeked through the blinds. 2 black SUVs idled by the curb, their headlights cutting through the rain. 4 men stood outside in dark coats. Not police, not journalists. Her breath caught. Oh God! She grabbed Eli's hand. Baby, wake up. We need to go. Eli blinked sleepily. What's happening? She forced a calm tone. We're taking a trip. Okay? Quiet now. She scooped up the small bag Clara had given her. Documents, some cash, a power bank, and a phone. Then she led Eli toward the back stairway, praying it wasn't too late. The first door bang turned into a violent kick. Open the door or we break it down. Miriam pulled Eli into the stairwell. Her hands trembled as they hurried down the dark steps, her heart beating in her ears. Behind them, the sound of splintering would echoed. The men had broken in. Outside, the rain soaked them instantly. Miriam's car was parked down the block. She half-dragged, half-carried Eli across puddles, her breath visible in the cold air. Why are they after us, Mama? He whispered. Because you did something powerful, she said softly. And powerful people fear the truth. They reached the car. Miriam shoved the key into the ignition, praying it would start. The engine coughed once, then came alive. Just as she reversed, headlights flared behind them, SUVs moving closer. Hold on, she shouted. Tires screeched. The little car fishtailed onto the wet street as bullets cracked the air, hitting metal and glass. Eli screamed. Miriam ducked low, gripping the wheel with shaking hands. The chase tore through the empty city streets. The governor's men followed, shouting into radios. Block the junction. Don't let them reach the highway. But the rain worked in Miriam's favor. The roads were slick, visibility low. She turned sharply into a narrow alley between warehouses, headlights off. The SUVs sped past, missing her. She exhaled shakily, tears mixing with rain. Eli clutched her arm. "Mama, they're gone? For now," she whispered. "But we can't go home. Ever again." At dawn, they arrived at an old service station miles outside the city. Clara was already there, waiting with a small group, 2 journalists and a lawyer from the Civil Rights Council. Miriam stumbled out of the car, exhausted, soaked to the bone. Clara rushed to her. "You're lucky you left when you did. They raided your apartment 10 minutes after you drove off." Miriam's eyes widened. "They would have." "Yes." Clara looked grim. "Belmont's desperate. The commission confirmed they're investigating him. If those documents in the safe are verified, it's over. He's trying to silence anyone who can testify, especially you and Eli." Eli held his mother's hand tightly. "Mama, I'm scared." Clara knelt to his level. "Listen to me, Eli. You didn't do anything wrong. You helped the whole country see the truth. People all over the world are talking about you." "Talking about me?" he whispered. "Yes," said one of the journalists, a tall man named Samir. "There are hashtags everywhere, #justice for Eli, #pay-the-boy. People are protesting at the governor's house." Eli blinked, confused. "They're helping us?" "Yes," Miriam said softly, tears filling her eyes. "They're helping us, my love." Across town, inside the governor's mansion, Belmont stood before a shattered mirror. His reflection looked nothing like the man who used to command crowds and cameras. His eyes were red, his tie loosened, his hands trembling around a glass of whiskey. "Where are they?" he snarled into his phone. "We lost them, sir," came the reply. "They escaped toward the outskirts." Belmont slammed the glass down. "Then find them. I don't care what it takes. If that woman speaks to the press, if that boy testifies, it's over for me." A knock at the door interrupted him. His political advisor, slim and nervous, stepped in. "Governor, there's another problem. The Federal Anti-Corruption Task Force just announced an audit of all state accounts." Belmont's head snapped up. "What?" "They said it's part of a wider investigation. But, sir, your name is all over the papers." Belmont's face drained of color. "Who ordered it?" "The presidency." The governor stumbled back into his chair. For the first time, he looked afraid. "They want to make an example of me." His advisor hesitated. "Sir, if I may, maybe it's time to step down quietly. Claim you're taking time off for health reasons." Belmont's laughter was hollow and bitter. "Step down? I built this empire. I fed these men. And now they want to feed on me." He turned to the window. Outside, protesters had gathered beyond the gate. Some carried placards with Eli's face. Others shouted, "Pay the boy! Justice for the Maid! Governor must go!" Belmont's empire was cracking from within. By evening, Clara's team had moved Miriam and Eli to a safe house owned by a human rights group. The lights were dim, the air smelled of dust and old books, but for the first time in days, they could breathe. Miriam sat quietly, watching Eli play with a worn-out puzzle on the table. The journalists had left to prepare a press release. The lawyer was on the phone coordinating witness protection. Clara sat beside her. "You're brave, you know that?" Miriam smiled faintly. "I'm just a mother trying to keep her child alive." "And he's more than a child," Clara said. "He's a symbol now." "What do you mean?" "Every poor family watching this story sees him as proof that the small can defeat the mighty." He exposed the truth. "The public won't let this go." Miriam's eyes glistened. "I only wish my husband could see him now." "You never talk about him." "He died when Eli was 3. He was a teacher, always told me education was light. And now look. Our son used his mind to shine light on darkness." They both smiled quietly, the kind of smile that comes from pain and pride mixed together. But as peace settled briefly, danger crept closer again. At 11:30 p.m., Clara's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "We know where you're hiding. Bring the boy." Or we come for all of you. Her heart dropped. She showed Miriam silently. Miriam's hands began to shake. They found us. Clara stood quickly. Pack what you can. We're leaving now. But where will we go? Miriam whispered. Somewhere even Belmont's power can't reach. International Press Headquarters. Once the world sees you live, he won't touch you again. Eli looked up. Mama, are we running again? Miriam knelt and cupped his face. One last time, baby. Then we'll be safe, I promise. They moved quickly. Outside, the wind howled. The headlights of Clara's car cut through the darkness as they pulled away from the safe house, disappearing into the night. Behind them, two SUVs rolled silently out of the shadows. As they drove, Clara glanced in the mirror. They're following. Miriam's grip tightened on Eli. Oh God! Clara pressed harder on the accelerator. Hold on. There's a police checkpoint ahead. Once we reach it, we're fine. But when they reached the intersection, the checkpoint was empty. Cones overturned. No officers in sight. A trap. The SUVs accelerated behind them. A bullet cracked through the rear glass. Miriam screamed. Clara swerved hard, tires screeching. The car spun, hit the curb, and stopped. Smoke hissed from the hood. Out! Clara shouted. Run! They tumbled out into the rain-soaked street. Eli stumbled, his knee bleeding. Miriam scooped him up, sprinting behind a row of parked trucks. The SUVs stopped. Doors slammed. Men shouted orders. Clara whispered, Stay low. She pulled a small device from her pocket, a flare gun. One of the men appeared between the trucks. Before he could speak, Clara fired. The flare exploded in a burst of blinding red light. The men shouted, ducking. Sirens wailed in the distance. Real police this time. The attackers scattered, jumping back into their vehicles and speeding away. Miriam collapsed to her knees, clutching Eli tightly. It's okay, baby. It's over. Clara's chest heaved, her hair soaked, but she managed a shaky smile. You're safe. For now. In the distance, the sound of approaching sirens grew louder. The first real help was finally coming. By morning, the news was everywhere again. Governor's men linked to late-night attack on whistleblower family. Clips of the bullet-ridden car filled every screen. The public's outrage reached boiling point. The president himself issued a statement calling for a federal inquiry. The Anti-Corruption Commission froze all of Belmont's assets. Warrants were prepared. And in a small hospital room where Miriam held Eli's hand as he slept, Clara walked in with a quiet smile. You did it, she said softly. He's finished. Miriam looked at her son, sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. No, she whispered. We did it. Outside, reporters gathered, chanting his name. Eli, Eli, Eli. The boy who opened the safe had opened something far greater, the gate to justice. The sound of flashbulbs filled the air like gunfire. Governor Richard Belmont stood at the courthouse steps, surrounded by journalists, his face pale, his suit soaked in sweat despite the cool morning breeze. His guards tried to push the cameras back, but the crowd surged forward. Governor Belmont, one shouted. Did you send men to attack the maid and her son? Governor, are the corruption documents real? Governor, do you have anything to say to the boy who opened your safe? Belmont's lips trembled, his jaw tightening as microphones crowded his face. No comment, he muttered, forcing a smile that looked more like pain. Then, surrounded by bodyguards, he pushed through the courthouse doors. Inside, the lights were dim, the air thick with tension. This wasn't just a hearing, it was a spectacle. The country was watching. Every news channel, every social media feed, every household. And sitting quietly on the front row, clutching his mother's hand, was Eli. The boy looked smaller than anyone remembered from the viral videos, dressed neatly in a clean shirt and sweater. His wide brown eyes darted nervously around the courtroom, taking in the tall ceilings, the wooden benches, the rows of cameras behind glass panels. Miriam sat beside him, her hands trembling. She had worn her best dress, the same one she used to save for Christmas church service. Her eyes were tired but determined. Across the room, Governor Belmont took his seat at the defense table, his lawyers whispering urgently in his ear. And at the center of it all sat Justice Abiola, known across the nation for one thing. She could not be bought. The clerk's voice echoed. Case number 0459, the state versus Richard Belmont. Everyone stood. Court is now in session. The prosecution began with the first blow. A compilation video played on a massive screen for all to see. The moment the governor shouted, "Whoever opens this safe gets 500 million naira," the moment Eli stepped forward, the moment the safe clicked open, the moment Belmont grabbed the boy by his shirt and screamed, the courtroom was silent except for the faint whir of the projector. Then, like a knife cutting through the quiet, the prosecutor's voice rang out. "Your Honor, these are not rumors. These are not edited clips. These are verified recordings from multiple witnesses, including security consultant Clara Ross and 12 technicians who were in the room that day." Belmont's lawyer stood. "Objection. Those videos were illegally obtained." The judge raised a hand. "Overruled. The footage is admissible. Continue." The prosecutor nodded and turned to the jury. But that's not all. When the safe was opened, its contents revealed something far more damning than money. Documents showing offshore accounts, secret property deals, and payments to shell companies, all traced back to this man. He pointed toward Belmont, whose face turned red. Gasps filled the courtroom. The prosecutor continued. "In total, over 12 billion naira in undeclared funds, stolen from public contracts and hidden abroad. And the key to uncovering all of it came from a 10-year-old boy with a gift for memory. One this man mocked and assaulted." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The judge banged her gavel. "Order." Belmont leaned toward his lawyer, whispering harshly, but his microphone caught fragments of his words. "They can't prove I knew. I didn't open those accounts myself." But the prosecutor smiled. "We can prove it, Your Honor. We have signatures, we have witnesses, and we have the man who built the safe testifying that Governor Belmont personally demanded no backup codes, because he didn't want anyone knowing what he was hiding." That afternoon, Clara Ross took the stand. Calm, precise, and fearless. "I was hired as a private security consultant," she said, her British accent crisp. "I witnessed the event firsthand. The governor made the offer publicly. He signed a document stating whoever opened the safe would receive 500 million Nigerian nairas. When the boy succeeded, the governor became violent. I recorded everything on my phone." The defense lawyer sneered. "You're a foreigner, Ms. Ross. How do we know you're not part of a plot to embarrass our client?" Clara leaned forward slightly. "Because I didn't plan anything. I simply pressed record." Laughter rippled through the room. The defense lawyer turned away in frustration. The judge smiled faintly. "Proceed." Next came the technicians, each confirming that Belmont had signed the promise, that Eli opened the safe unaided, and that none of them were paid to lie. Then came the shocker. The prosecution displayed photos taken from inside the safe, clear images of secret ledgers, offshore accounts, and a list of politicians who had received bribes. The courtroom erupted. Belmont's lawyer shouted for order. "This is a smear campaign. My client has served this nation for decades." The prosecutor's voice cut through the noise like thunder. "And in those decades, how many families went hungry because of the money stolen from public funds? How many schools never got built? How many hospitals stayed empty?" Belmont slammed his hand on the table. "You don't know what it takes to lead. You don't know the sacrifices I made." The judge's gavel struck hard. "You will remain silent, Governor Belmont, or I will have you removed from this courtroom." Belmont froze. The cameras zoomed in on his face. Rage, fear, pride, and defeat all battling at once. By evening, the trial footage was everywhere. News anchors replayed every heated moment, every piece of evidence, every outburst. The nation was glued to their screens. Hashtags trended again, #PayEli, #GovernorTrial, #NoOne Above the Law. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of thousands gathered. Some sang, some prayed, some held up signs that read, "Truth open the safe." Miriam watched from a nearby waiting room, holding Eli close. The boy was tired but calm, his small hand gripping hers. "Mama," he whispered. "Are they angry at me?" She smiled softly. "No, baby. They're proud of you. You helped them see what was hidden." He tilted his head. "But will he go to jail?" Miriam's eyes flicked to the TV, where Belmont sat stone-faced behind his lawyers. "Maybe," she said, "if justice still means something." 3 days later, the final witness took the stand. The accountant who had managed Belmont's secret finances for years. His voice shook as he spoke. "I was ordered to create shell companies to hide stolen funds. I wanted to stop, but he threatened my family." Belmont leaped to his feet. "Lies! You're a coward trying to save yourself." The judge banged her gavel again. "Governor Belmont, one more word and I'll hold you in contempt." The accountant pulled a flash drive from his pocket. "These are the files, Your Honor. Bank transfers, offshore ledgers, everything." The courtroom went silent as the prosecutor handed it to the clerk. The judge looked over the documents for several long minutes, then finally raised her eyes. "Governor Belmont," she said evenly, "you have made a mockery of this court, this country, and the very office you swore to serve. The evidence against you is overwhelming." Belmont slumped in his chair. Eli, sitting behind his mother, whispered, "Mama, is it over?" "Almost, baby," she said. The judge continued, her voice firm. "This court finds the defendant, Richard Belmont, guilty on all counts: corruption, embezzlement, and the assault of a minor. Sentencing will follow next week." Cheers erupted outside. The reporters ran to broadcast the news. Belmont sat motionless as officers approached. His eyes met Eli's across the room. Cold, broken, but filled with something strange. Maybe regret, maybe rage. Miriam turned away, clutching her son. As the officers led the disgraced governor out, a chant began in the crowd outside. "Justice for Eli! Justice for Eli!" Later that night, the same chant echoed through television sets across the world. The story of the boy who opened a governor's safe had become a symbol of hope far beyond their city. And in a quiet room, Miriam knelt beside her son's bed. "You see, Eli?" she whispered. "Sometimes truth walks slowly, but it always arrives." Eli smiled sleepily. "Do we get the 500 million now?" Miriam laughed softly through her tears. "Maybe one day, baby. But for now, we have something richer. Peace." The airport was alive with noise, boarding calls, rolling suitcases, and the constant hum of voices echoing beneath the high glass ceiling. But amidst it all, Miriam's hands wouldn't stop trembling. She clutched Eli's small passport tightly, her eyes darting from one uniformed guard to another. Clara walked slightly ahead, speaking into her phone. "Yes, the UN team confirmed the clearance. We board in 20 minutes. Miriam exhaled shakily. 20 minutes? Just 20 more. Eli tugged her hand. "Mama, are we really flying in the sky this time?" She forced a smile. "Yes, baby. For the first time." He giggled softly, his innocent joy cutting through the tension. But even as she smiled, Miriam's stomach churned. The memory of the last attack haunted her. She couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching, somewhere in the crowd. As they moved toward the security checkpoint, Clara checked their documents again. Passports, check. UN authorization letters, check. "Keep your heads down and follow me." Miriam nodded. "Clara, thank you for everything." Clara smiled faintly. "Just promise me one thing. Once you land, don't look back." They stepped forward in line. Ahead of them, a family laughed as they handed over their passports. Everything seemed normal, peaceful. Then came the sound that froze Miriam's heart. A man's voice behind them, calm, cold, too familiar. "You didn't think you could run forever, did you?" Miriam's breath stopped. She turned slowly. Standing by the terminal wall, dressed in a black suit and dark glasses, was Jonas Belmont, the former governor's younger brother. He smiled thinly, adjusting his cufflinks. "You destroyed my brother's life. Did you think we'd just let you fly away?" Clara stepped in front of Miriam instinctively. This is UN-protected territory. If you try anything, Jonas smirked. Relax. I'm just here to talk. I'm not my brother. He looked down at Eli. So this is the boy? The little genius who opened the safe. Eli hid behind his mother. Leave us alone, Miriam said firmly. Jonas tilted his head. You got what you wanted: money, fame, sympathy. But you made powerful enemies. You can't imagine how many names were in those documents your son exposed. Some of them don't forgive. Clara's voice was sharp. Are you threatening us? Not threatening, Jonas said softly. Warning. Because when the wrong people come, I won't be able to protect you either. He turned to leave, but not before leaning closer to Miriam and whispering, You should have taken the deal when you had the chance. Then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd. Miriam's knees felt weak. Clara, what deal? Clara's face went pale. He's bluffing. Stay focused. We need to get on that plane. But Miriam wasn't convinced. Her hands trembled as they passed through security. She held Eli close, whispering prayers under her breath. At the gate, they sat quietly, waiting for boarding to begin. Eli leaned against her arm, half asleep. Mama, he murmured. Can we see the stars from the airplane? Yes, baby, she whispered, brushing his hair. You'll see them all. For a brief, fragile moment, everything felt peaceful. The nightmare seemed behind them, until the announcement came. Attention passengers on Flight 422 to Geneva. Boarding will be delayed due to a technical issue. Clara frowned. That wasn't scheduled. Miriam's heart skipped. What does it mean? Clara stood. Stay here. I'll check with the staff. She walked toward the counter, flashing her badge. The airline worker looked nervous, whispering something she couldn't quite hear. Then Clara froze. Her face drained of color. She turned, sprinting back. Miriam, we have to move now. What happened? Someone changed your names in the system. You're flagged for detention. Miriam's stomach dropped. What? It's a setup. Someone on the inside. They want to stop you before you leave. Where do we go? Clara grabbed their hands. Follow me. Service corridor now. They dashed through the back hallways, past cleaning carts and maintenance doors. Shouts echoed behind them. Stop those passengers! Eli stumbled. Miriam scooped him up, heart hammering. Clara, they're coming. I know. Keep running. They burst through a metal door into the cargo area. The roar of plane engines filled the air. The tarmac stretched out before them, bright under the floodlights. Ahead, a UN escort vehicle waited by a gate. A woman waved frantically from the driver's seat. This way, Clara yelled. Go, go! But as they neared the gate, gunfire erupted behind them. Security guards scattered for cover. Bullets sparked off the metal containers. Miriam screamed, clutching Eli. Clara turned, firing back with her pistol, shouting, Get to the car! They reached the gate just as the car doors opened. Miriam pushed Eli inside. Get in, baby! A bullet struck the ground near her feet. Clara dove in next, slamming the door. The driver sped off, tires screeching as the attacker's SUV burst onto the tarmac behind them. Eli was crying. Mama, I'm scared. Miriam held him tight. It's okay, my love. We're almost free. Clara shouted to the driver. Gate 9, now. They can't fire near the planes. The car weaved through the maze of ground vehicles, headlights flashing, sirens blaring. The SUV behind them kept coming. Clara looked back, eyes fierce. They don't stop. They won't, Miriam said through tears. Not until we're gone. Finally, they reached the military hangar where a smaller UN jet waited. Engines humming, lights blinking. Clara jumped out, waving to the pilot. Take off now. Miriam and Eli ran up the stairs as bullets cracked in the distance. Just as they reached the door, Clara turned to cover them, and a single gunshot rang out. She stumbled. Clara! Miriam screamed. Clara pressed a hand to her side, blood seeping through her jacket. Go! Don't stop. I can't leave you. You have to. Clara's voice broke. Get him out. Promise me. Tears poured down Miriam's face as she pulled Eli into the plane. The door slammed shut behind them. Through the window, she saw Clara fall to her knees, clutching her gun, firing one last time before soldiers swarmed in. Then the plane engines roared. The runway lights blurred beneath them as the aircraft lifted into the night sky. Eli pressed his face to the window, watching the shrinking city below. "Mama, Clara's not coming." Miriam's voice broke. "She saved us, baby. She saved us." He turned to her, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Will she be okay?" Miriam looked out into the dark clouds. "Heroes never die, Eli. They live in what they protect." Hours later, the sun rose over the Alps. The plane descended toward a quiet Geneva morning. Miriam held her son close, both exhausted, both silent. The moment the wheels touched down, she whispered, "We made it." Eli smiled weakly. "We really flew." She kissed his forehead. "Yes, my love. And no one can take that from us." But as she looked out the window, her eyes caught something strange. A man in a dark coat standing on the runway, watching the plane as it taxied to the gate. Her chest tightened. The fight for freedom, it seemed, had followed them across the sea. The knock came just after sunrise. 3 soft taps. Precise. Careful. Miriam froze mid-step in the kitchen, a mug of tea halfway to her lips. Eli sat at the dining table, drawing airplanes on a sheet of paper. "Who could that be?" she whispered. Their new apartment was small but elegant. White curtains, gray furniture, and the hum of the Swiss city beyond the glass windows. The UN had arranged everything. A safe home, new identities, even a private tutor for Eli. They had been here only 10 days. And yet the knock felt wrong. Too familiar. She moved toward the door quietly, peeking through the peephole. Her breath caught. A tall man in a charcoal trench coat stood outside, sharp jaw, trimmed beard, a faint scar across his cheek. He carried a black folder under one arm. He raised his eyes directly to the peephole and said calmly, "Mrs. Okeke, my name is Agent Lutz. I'm with Interpol." Miriam hesitated. "Interpol? Yes, ma'am. It's about Governor Belmont's brother. May I come in?" Her heart raced. "Show your ID." He held up a badge. It looked official. The name matched. Reluctantly, Miriam opened the door halfway. "What do you want?" Lutz spoke softly. "Jonas Belmont is here. In Geneva. We believe he followed you." Miriam's blood ran cold. "Here? How did he?" "We intercepted encrypted communication. He arrived 3 days ago under a false identity." Eli looked up from his drawing. "Mama, who's that?" "Someone helping us," she said quickly. Lutz's eyes softened. "Don't be afraid, young man. You're very brave. Everyone at the agency knows your story." Eli smiled shyly, unaware of the storm that hung over them. Lutz turned back to Miriam. "I'll need you to come with me to headquarters for your protection. We'll move you again." "Now?" "Yes, immediately." Something in his tone made her uneasy. Too rehearsed. Too smooth. "Wait," she said slowly. "Where's Clara's file?" "She worked with the agency too." Lutz blinked. "Clara?" "Yes, Clara Idowu, our liaison. She was killed during extraction." Lutz's face shifted. "Killed?" He tilted his head slightly. "Funny. I just spoke to her this morning." Miriam's heart stopped. "What did you say?" "I said." His voice dropped lower. "I just spoke to Clara." Her blood ran cold. Before she could react, Lutz smiled faintly, and with one swift motion, he pulled a silenced pistol from his coat pocket. "Don't scream," he said. Miriam grabbed Eli, dragging him behind the kitchen counter as the gun went off. "THFF." A bullet hit the wall above the doorway. Eli screamed. Miriam crawled across the tiled floor, searching for anything. A knife? A pan? Something. Lutz's calm voice filled the apartment. "You could have stayed quiet, Miriam. Taken the money, lived your life. But no, you had to play the hero." He stepped closer. "Do you know how many powerful men your son ruined?" Miriam snatched a pot from the stove and hurled it. It hit the counter near his leg. A loud clang. "Run, Eli!" she screamed. Eli bolted through the living room toward the hallway. Lutz aimed again, another shot. The bullet shattered the glass vase beside the boy. Miriam tackled him from behind, sending the gun sliding under the sofa. They struggled, elbows, fists, gasps. She clawed at his face, nails drawing blood across his cheek. He grunted, shoving her hard against the wall. "Still got fight," he muttered, wiping the blood. "No wonder Belmont feared you." Miriam's eyes blazed. "You'll never touch my son." From behind the couch, Eli crawled, eyes darting to the pistol on the floor. He remembered the drills Clara taught them. If danger comes, stay low. Be quiet. Wait for the opening. His small hands reached for the gun, trembling but determined. Lutz turned toward him, too late. The safety clicked. Eli's voice shook. "Leave my mama alone." Lutz froze. Miriam whispered, "Eli, baby, put it down." But the boy's eyes filled with tears. "He wants to hurt you." Lutz smiled slowly. "You won't shoot me, boy. You're just a kid." Eli's hands trembled. "I opened a safe no one could open. I can do this too." Before anyone could move, heavy boots thundered in the hallway. The door burst open. Real Interpol agents stormed in. "Drop your weapon," one shouted. Lutz turned, furious, but before he could react, they tackled him to the ground. The pistol flew across the floor. Miriam grabbed Eli, shielding him. Two officers cuffed Lutz and yanked him upright. Blood trickled from his cheek where Miriam's nails had torn his skin. "Target secured," one agent reported. "We've got him." Miriam stared at them, breathless. "He said Clara was alive." The lead agent looked puzzled. "Clara Idowu? Ma'am, she died at the airport. We have confirmation." Miriam's heart sank. "Then how did he know her name?" The agent frowned. "Because someone told him." Later that evening, Miriam sat in a dimly lit office at Interpol headquarters. A kind-faced woman in a navy blazer handed her a cup of water. "You're safe now," she said. "Lutz isn't one of us. He was ex-agency, fired 2 years ago for corruption. He was working with Belmont's network." Miriam exhaled shakily. "He said powerful men were still coming." The woman nodded gravely. "He's right. There's still a circle funding Belmont's legal fight from prison. They want the case to disappear." Eli sat beside his mother, quiet and pale. He clutched her hand tightly. Miriam turned to the officer. "So what happens to us now?" "You'll be moved again. Different country this time. And we'll keep watching the case." Miriam shook her head. "I can't keep running. I want to fight. I want to face them." The officer smiled sadly. "You already have. And you're still standing." 3 days later, a courier arrived with a small sealed envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a silver necklace, Clara's. The note read, "For Miriam and Eli. I knew if anything happened, you'd keep going. Don't let fear bury the truth. Clara." Miriam held the necklace against her heart, tears streaming down her cheeks. "She knew," she whispered. "She knew this wasn't over." Eli looked up at her. "Mama, what if the bad men never stop?" She smiled softly through the tears. "Then we don't stop either. That's what courage means. We keep standing, even when we're scared." That night, the news broke again. Interpol dismantles Belmont's international network. Dozens arrested across 3 countries. Miriam watched from the balcony as Geneva's city lights shimmered. The world was finally turning in their favor. But she knew better than anyone. Justice came with a price. She turned to Eli. "Baby, tomorrow we'll start over again. New names, new home, but our hearts stay the same." Eli nodded, smiling faintly. "Can I still use my memory to help people?" She kissed his forehead. "Yes, my love. Use it to build, not to break." They stood together under the cold night sky, the lights reflecting in the glass like distant stars. For the first time in a long time, the air didn't feel like fear. It felt like hope. The applause was thunderous. Cameras flashed like lightning across the stage as Eli stood beside the host of an international science conference in London. He wore a navy blue suit, his curls neatly combed, his voice steady as he spoke into the microphone. And that's how photographic memory can help solve problems computers can't. The crowd rose to their feet. Professors, inventors, and journalists all clapped for the 13-year-old boy from Nigeria who had once opened an uncrackable safe. The screen behind him displayed his name, Eli Okeke, the boy who remembered everything. Miriam watched from the audience, tears in her eyes. It had been 3 years since Geneva, 3 years since the gunfire, the hiding, the fear. Now her son was being celebrated worldwide for his mind, not his trauma. After the event, reporters crowded them outside. Eli, how does it feel to be famous at 13? What do you remember most from that night with the safe? Is it true that your foundation now helps other gifted African children? Eli smiled politely. I don't think of myself as famous. I just want to help other kids believe they can do something great too. The crowd cheered again. Miriam placed a protective hand on his shoulder. Cameras clicked as they walked to their car. Inside, she sighed. You handled that like a grown man. Eli chuckled. Mama, I just told the truth. But Miriam's smile faded as they drove off. Truth had saved them once, but it had also nearly destroyed them. That night in their London apartment, Eli sat by the window, looking at the stars. Mama, he said softly, do you think the bad people are gone now? Miriam hesitated. Most of them, yes. The rest learned that no one is untouchable. Eli nodded. I still think about Clara sometimes. She's with God, Miriam whispered, watching over us. He smiled faintly. Maybe she helps me remember things. Miriam chuckled softly. Maybe. She tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and turned off the lamp. But long after he slept, she stayed awake, watching the London lights flicker outside, the way the city breathed. Something in her heart wouldn't rest. 3 days later, during a live television interview, Eli was asked a strange question. The host smiled warmly. Eli, your memory is legendary. But tell me, do you remember the exact numbers you used to open the safe? The studio audience leaned forward. Eli laughed nervously. Oh, I could never forget. 47, 23, 91, 15. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The host grinned. Still sharp as ever. But somewhere far away, in a private hospital room in Abuja, Jonas Belmont, the brother of the disgraced governor, stared at that broadcast, his face stone still. He turned up the volume. 47, 23, 91, 15. He whispered the numbers slowly, then smiled coldly. So he still remembers. That evening, Miriam got a call from a restricted number. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Hello. A smooth voice came through. Mrs. Okeke, I hope London's treating you well. Her heart froze. Who is this? Let's just say, someone who remembers what your son remembers. Click. The line went dead. Miriam's hands trembled. She called Interpol immediately, but their records showed no traceable signal. When she went to Eli's room, he was asleep, his notebook scattered, filled with numbers, patterns, and puzzles. She looked down and froze. On one page, written repeatedly in neat, small handwriting, were the same numbers, 47, 23, 91, 15. She touched his shoulder. Baby, why did you write this? Eli stirred. It was in my dream again. The safe, Mama. It was open, but this time, it was empty. Miriam's breath caught. Empty. He nodded slowly. Yes, and someone was standing behind it. I couldn't see his face. The next morning, the media exploded with a breaking headline. Ex-Governor Belmont found dead in prison cell. Miriam dropped her phone. Oh my God! The report said he died of heart failure. But Miriam knew better. She remembered Clara's words. Power never sleeps. That same day, a black envelope was slipped under their door. Eli found it first. Mama, someone dropped this. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph. of Governor Belmont's brother, Jonas, sitting at a table, and next to him, a man she recognized instantly. Agent Lutz, dead. Across the bottom of the photograph, a message was written in blood-red ink. It ends when he forgets. Miriam's knees buckled. Oh God! Eli ran to her. Mama, what's wrong? She forced a shaky smile. Nothing, baby. It's just old ghosts. But her heart was screaming. Someone out there was hunting again. By evening, Interpol agents surrounded their building. The family was moved into protective custody once more. Eli sat quietly in the back seat of the armored car, staring out the window. Mama, are we in danger again? She took his hand. Not danger, baby. Just attention. You're special. And sometimes, that scares people. He sighed. I don't want to be special anymore. Miriam smiled sadly. Neither did I. But maybe we were chosen for this. 2 nights later, something strange happened. Eli woke suddenly from a dream, drenched in sweat. He grabbed his notebook and began writing furiously. Lines of numbers, coordinates, symbols. Miriam rushed in. Eli, what's wrong? He pointed at the page. Mama, I think I remembered something new. The safe. There was a second lock. A hidden code behind the panel. What are you talking about? I never noticed it before, but now I see it. The last night Belmont opened it, he turned something twice. There was another compartment. Miriam frowned. After all these years? He nodded quickly. And Mama, there was a name on a file. I think it said, Project Eclipse. By morning, Interpol analysts confirmed something extraordinary. There was a secret compartment in Belmont's safe. One that investigators had missed years ago. Inside, they found encrypted data detailing offshore accounts belonging to politicians across 6 countries. Names, transactions, shell companies, proof of a global web of corruption. And Eli's memory had unlocked it again. News spread instantly. The boy who remembered everything strikes again. Eli Okeke exposes global network. The world hailed him as a prodigy, a hero, a miracle. But behind the praise, Miriam felt dread. Because every secret exposed created new enemies, more powerful than before. That evening, she received another message. A simple text, no name attached. If he remembers Project Eclipse, they'll come for him next. Miriam turned off the phone and stared at her son, sleeping peacefully under his blanket. The moonlight fell across his face. He looked so calm, so innocent. She whispered to the darkness, Why can't the world let my child rest? And somewhere far away, in a luxury penthouse overlooking the River Thames, Jonas Belmont watched the same news broadcast, a faint smile curving his lips. He whispered, Let him remember, every genius eventually breaks. The night sky over London burned with sirens. A convoy of black SUVs tore down Westminster Bridge, engines roaring. At the front sat Miriam Okeke, her face pale but determined, and beside her, Eli, clutching a hard drive to his chest, the one containing the decrypted Project Eclipse files. Where are we going, Mama? Eli asked, voice trembling. Somewhere safe, she said, but her voice betrayed doubt. Somewhere they can't silence us. Behind them, Interpol agents spoke rapidly over radios. Team 2 in pursuit of secondary target. Repeat, we've confirmed visual on Belmont's brother, Jonas Belmont, armed and accompanied. Eli's fingers tightened on the hard drive. Mama, what if they catch us? Miriam turned to him, eyes fierce. They won't. Not while I'm alive. And then, a deafening explosion shook the bridge. The lead car flipped in a burst of fire. Tires screamed. The convoy veered wildly. Miriam's driver slammed the brakes. Ambush! An agent shouted. Gunfire erupted from both sides of the bridge. Bullets shattered glass, sparks flying. Miriam ducked over Eli, screaming, Stay down! A voice came through the radio. Smooth, cold, mocking. You should have left the past buried, Mrs. Okeke. It was Jonas Belmont. Smoke filled the air. Agents returned fire, shouting into radios for backup. Through the chaos, Jonas stepped from a nearby van, dressed in black, a silencer in hand. His face was calm, too calm. "Give me the drive," he called out, walking closer. "You have no idea what's on it. These files don't just ruin men. They collapse governments." Miriam shouted back. "Then let them collapse." Jonas smirked. "And let innocent people starve when the system falls? You think you're saving the world, you're not. You're just a maid with a martyr complex." He raised the gun toward her. Suddenly Eli stood. "Don't you touch her." "Eli, no!" Miriam screamed. Jonas hesitated, lowering his aim slightly. "The genius boy. You could have been useful, you know. You could have worked for us. You could have remembered for us." Eli's eyes narrowed. "I'd rather forget everything than help monsters like you." Jonas's smile vanished. "Then you'll forget forever." He pulled the trigger, but the shot never hit. A black helicopter roared overhead, floodlights blasting down. Interpol strike teams rappelled from the air, shouting commands. "Drop your weapon. Hands where we can see them." Jonas turned, furious, firing wildly. Agents scattered for cover. Miriam grabbed Eli's hand. "Run!" They sprinted toward the bridge's far end as bullets tore through the air. One struck the pavement beside Eli's foot. He stumbled. Miriam caught him, pulling him along. "Don't look back, baby. Just run." Behind them, Jonas shouted. "You can't hide from memory, boy." Miriam and Eli dove behind a concrete barrier as the helicopter descended, engines screaming. Interpol agents swarmed, tackling Jonas to the ground. He fought viciously, spitting curses. "You don't understand. You think you've won? There are others. Bigger than me. The project will live." An agent slammed cuffs on his wrists. "Not tonight." Hours later, the bridge was sealed. Emergency lights bathed the wreckage in a ghostly glow. Interpol officers gathered evidence, and paramedics treated the wounded. Miriam sat on the curb, clutching Eli in her arms, shaking. The hard drive lay beside her, still intact. A senior agent knelt before them. "You both saved lives tonight. Those files expose leaders in 6 countries. There'll be arrests before dawn." Miriam nodded weakly. "So it's finally over?" He sighed. "For you, yes. For the world, it's just beginning." The next morning, every news channel carried the story. Project Eclipse exposed. International corruption network unraveled. Governor Belmont's legacy ends in global scandal. Mother and son behind historic revelation. Images of Miriam and Eli filled the screen. Standing together, tired but unbroken. Eli looked older now, wiser. His eyes held the same fire they had the night he opened that safe years ago. A month later, they were invited to Geneva once more, not to hide this time, but to speak. The hall was packed with journalists and world leaders. Miriam stood at the podium, her voice calm, her English accented with the soft melody of home. "I was once a maid. My son was once called a nobody. But truth doesn't care about who you are. It only waits to be seen. I don't stand here as a hero. I stand as a mother who wanted her son to live in a world where honesty isn't punished." The crowd rose in thunderous applause. Then Eli stepped up beside her, his small hand resting on the microphone. He looked out at the world and said softly, "My memory opened a safe, but my mother's courage opened hearts." For a moment the hall was silent, then erupted into standing ovation. Miriam wiped tears from her cheeks, smiling through them. "That's my boy." That night, back in their hotel, Eli stood on the balcony watching the stars. "Mama," he said quietly, "do you think they'll ever stop fighting?" She walked up beside him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "The world will always fight, my love, but people like you remind it why it's worth saving." He smiled faintly. "And Clara? She's smiling too," Miriam said softly, looking toward the sky. "Somewhere. She's watching, proud of what we became." The next morning, as dawn broke over the Swiss mountains, Miriam packed their bags once again. But this time it wasn't to run, it was to go home. Nigeria was calling. "Are we really going back?" Eli asked. "Yes," she said with a warm smile. It's time our story ends where it began. When their plane landed at Murtala Muhammad Airport in Lagos, crowds were waiting, waving flags, cheering, holding signs that read, "Welcome home, Eli and Miriam." Miriam wept openly as she stepped onto Nigerian soil, sunlight warming her face. A reporter shouted, "Mrs. Okeke, what's next for you and your son?" She smiled, her arm around Eli. "We're going to build schools, not walls, because knowledge is the safest vault." Eli grinned up at her. "And anyone can open it." The crowd cheered again. That evening, in their modest new home on the city's outskirts, Miriam lit a candle beside Clara's old necklace and whispered, "You kept your promise, my friend. We survived." Outside, the city buzzed, alive, defiant, hopeful. Eli sat at the window, watching the candles glow. He whispered to himself, "No safe can hold the truth forever." And somewhere deep in the silence, as the flame flickered, it almost felt like the world agreed. If you followed Miriam and Eli's journey from the first chapter till now, thank you. Comment "Truth always wins" if this ending touched your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because more stories like this are coming soon on this channel. Sometimes, even the smallest voices can shake the biggest empires.